Alexander the Great, king of the Macedonians, is a legendary warrior who conquered most of the known world in just over a decade. But how did he do it? How did this relatively short, stubby little man with one blue eye and one green eye conquer Persia, Egypt, and even India? Was it just his military genius, or was there something more to Alexander's story? And why is he still so famous today? Well, let's find out. This is the complete story of Alexander the Great from his birth to his death. Alexander III of Macedon was born in Pella, the capital of the Kingdom of Macedon, in 356 BC. He was the son of King Philip II of Macedon and his second wife, Olympias, the daughter of Neoptolemus I of Epirus. At the time of Alexander's birth, Macedon was not a very powerful kingdom. It was small and weak, and was constantly being attacked by its more powerful neighbors, the Persians and the Spartans. However, Philip II had managed to unite the various tribes of Macedon under his rule, and was in the process of building a powerful army that would make Macedon a major force in Greece. When Alexander was just a baby, Philip brought him to the Oracle of Delphi to be told his future. The oracle is said to have proclaimed that Alexander would become the greatest king of all, but there was also a warning that he would die young. Not surprisingly, Philip was very concerned about this prophecy, but he decided to ignore it and raised Alexander to be a great king. He hired the best tutors for him and made sure that he got the best education possible. One of Alexander's tutors was the philosopher Aristotle, who taught him about philosophy, science, and politics. The two became so close that they remained friends for life, and Aristotle even gave Alexander a copy of his book Politics as a parting gift when Alexander left Macedon to conquer the world. From an early age, Alexander showed that he was a very intelligent and ambitious boy. He was curious about everything and wanted to learn about everything. He was also very athletic and loved to hunt and ride horses. But Alexander's favorite thing to do was to listen to stories about the legendary heroes of the past, especially the stories about Achilles, the greatest hero of the Trojan War. Alexander became so obsessed with Achilles that he even tried to imitate him by wearing the same type of armor and carrying the same type of spear. However, Philip wasn't really a fan of these Achilles imitations. He felt that it was more important for Alexander to be seen as a real Macedonian king than as a mythical hero. So he ordered his son to stop wearing Achilles' armor and instead wear the traditional Macedonian royal outfit. But Alexander didn't listen to him and continued to wear Achilles' armor. In fact, he even went as far as to claim that he was a descendant of Achilles, which made Philip very angry. He punished Alexander by sending him to live with the royal family of Epirus for a while. However, Philip soon realized that he had made a mistake. He missed Alexander very much, and he knew that he couldn't stay mad at him for long. So he sent for him and welcomed him back to the royal court. But now Philip was determined to make Alexander into a real Macedonian king, not a mythical hero. He took Alexander on his military campaigns and taught him the art of war. He also arranged for Alexander to marry a Persian princess named Roxana, which would help to forge an alliance between Macedon and Persia. In 336 BC, Philip was assassinated by one of his own generals, Antipater. This meant that Alexander was now the king of Macedon at the age of 20. One of the first things that Alexander did as king was to go on a campaign against the Persians. He wanted to avenge his father's death, but he also wanted to fulfill the prophecy that he would become the greatest king of all. At the time, the Persian Empire was at its weakest point in centuries. It had been weakened by years of civil war and was ripe for conquest. Alexander led his army into Persia and began to ravage the countryside. He defeated the Persians in several battles and captured many cities. His most famous victory was at the Battle of Issus in 333 BC, where he defeated the Persian king, Darius III. After Issus, Alexander could have easily marched onto Babylon and seized the Persian throne. But instead, he decided to continue his campaign against the other Greek city-states. He wanted to make sure that the Greeks were on his side before he went further into Asia. After securing Greece, Alexander turned back to the east and continued his campaign against the Persians. He went as far as India and defeated King Porus at the Battle of the Hydaspes River. After the battle, Alexander learned that his friend and tutor, Aristotle, had died. He was very sad to hear this, but he knew that Aristotle would have wanted him to keep going. So he continued his campaign. However, his troops were now exhausted, and they wanted to go home. Alexander knew that he couldn't force them to go any further, so he decided to turn back and go home. On the way back, he stopped in Babylon where he met his lover, Bagoas, and spent the winter months having fun. In 330 BC, Alexander crossed the Caspian Gates and entered the fertile and wealthy Persian province of Khorasan. There he heard about the rebellion of his friend and companion, Ptolemy, in Egypt. Alexander was furious about this and immediately marched on to Egypt to put down the rebellion. When he arrived in Egypt, he found that the rebels had already taken control of the country, but Alexander was able to defeat them and establish his control over Egypt. He then went on to conquer the rest of the Middle East and North Africa. By 323 BC, Alexander had conquered the entire Persian Empire. He had done what no other Greek leader had ever done before. He had also done what his father had always dreamed of doing. Philip had wanted to conquer the Persians, but he had never been able to do it. Alexander had done it twice. However, after conquering Persia, Alexander didn't stop. He kept going further and further. He went to India and even China. But eventually his troops got tired and they forced him to turn back. When Alexander finally returned to Babylon in 323 BC, he was a hero. He was greeted with parades and celebrations. The people of Babylon loved him and they considered him to be a god. But Alexander wasn't interested in being a god. He was more interested in being a conqueror. He wanted to keep going, but his troops weren't having it. They had been fighting for years, and they wanted to go home. Alexander knew that he couldn't fight his troops, so he agreed to end his campaign. But soon after he ended his campaign, he died. Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC at the age of 32. The official cause of death was malaria, but there are many other theories. Some believe that he was poisoned by his wife, Roxana, and others believe that he was killed by his bodyguard, Bagoas. But the truth is, we don't know how Alexander died. All we know is that he died young, just like the Oracle of Delphi had predicted. When Alexander died, his empire was divided among his friends and generals. This led to a period of civil war and strife among the Macedonians, but it also led to the spread of Greek culture throughout the Middle East and North Africa. Alexander's empire may have been short-lived, but its effects were long-lasting. Even today, we remember Alexander the Great because of his military genius and his ability to unite people from different cultures together. He was a true Renaissance man, a great warrior, a brilliant strategist, a lover of knowledge, and a patron of the arts. He was also a very complex man. He was ambitious and ruthless when he needed to be, but he was also kind and generous. He was a true leader who inspired his followers to do great things. But he was also a man who was cursed by the gods to die young. He was a man who lived a life of luxury and pleasure, but he was also a man who was constantly in danger. He was a man who conquered the known world, but he was also a man who ultimately failed. What are your thoughts on the life and legacy of Alexander the Great? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.